Okay, so Rondo of Blood. If Super Castlevania is Castlevania 1 supercharged, Rondo of Blood is Castlevania 3 turbocharged. We're talking a game that has alternative characters, only one, but still an alternative character to play as, in Maria Renard, who is hysterical because she's a 12-year-old girl who throws owls at people and is hilariously overpowered. We're talking as well a game that has multiple endings based on how many people you're able to rescue with awesome anime Chad Richter Belmont. It has more plots than any previous game with actual cutscenes with voice acting, which is crazy to think for the time, which I believe was like 1994 this game came out. This is madness for the time to have cutscenes of this caliber. And also, my personal favourite thing about this game that makes me come back to it and makes me sing its praises so often is that it offers 4 different routes. That is so much replayability. And although Richter doesn't have a lot of moves that were set up by Simon, like the moonwalking's gone, the 8-way whip is gone, and I'm not even sure if he can even spin his whip around like Simon could. In its place, he's gained a backflip, which is effectively a double jump in a Castlevania game, which no other Belmont ever got their hands on until the ClassicVania series came into play. And also a new ability called Item Crash, which basically lets you unleash a super attack based on whatever sub-weapon you had equipped. So there's Holy Cross, which is which lets you unleash this huge cross that engulfs the entire screen and will basically just wipe everything out. Or there's Hydrostorm, which will just make it rain holy water, which does an insane amount of damage. They're all massively useful, and usually they're all screen clearing moves. So they cost a lot of hearts, but they're awesome. The visual direction overall is massively improved, not only because of the actual hardware that they're using with the PC engine, but also just because of there's a lot of little things in this game that just weren't really done before, like how one of the first bosses in the game is this dragon wyvern creature that will come in from the background and attack you into the foreground. I even showed as well another enemy that was similar, the werewolf, which also does the same thing. It's things like that that just make it really exciting to play and look at. I'd say this is one of the best examples of Castlevania's evolution of constantly trying to one-up itself from a visual standpoint.
So would you say it builds better anticipation? It
builds better anticipation, and it also is trying to be a spectacle, which I said before the ClassicVania franchise, but this game really is trying to wow the player with some exciting visuals and cutscenes.
Do you think this is like the missing link between these two different styles of Castlevania?
I would say, when you consider the fact that Symphony of the Night, which is the game changer that created ClassicVania, is a direct sequel to this game, I think it's completely fair to say that this is the missing link between classic Castlevania and the newer ClassicVania. It's also the game that actually drew Igarashi to the Castlevania franchise anyway, as his girlfriend was actually working on the game at the time, or so it is said. She would basically give him advice on the project he was working on, and in turn he would basically play Rondo of Blood on breaks. I'm guessing as a test play, or maybe he was just like, this game's fucking awesome, I'm going to keep playing this. In terms of actual ports for this game, we never actually saw a port of this particular game for some time, instead getting Dracula X, which was a Super Nintendo port that is basically debated whether it's a port or a remake.
I'd say it's more of a remake.
It has enough changes to it to basically be a remake. Maria, for starters, is not playable. You're only playing as Richter. Boo! I want to throw owls at people. There are only 2 alternative paths. It's making the game more linear. Its difficulty is increased to a ridiculous degree. This is often claimed to be one of the hardest Castlevania games to play. They even changed the final boss, like Dracula, completely because there were complaints that the original boss was too easy. And just, I'd rather take too easy than too hard. I don't care how awesome you are, how many achievements you have. I'm not wasting my time, like, frustrating myself to death fighting this one version of Dracula.
Because it seems like it's artificial difficulty, right?
It's just like you're on a bunch of platforms with death pits and he can teleport and he's a humongous sprite and he just fills the screen with shit. It's like a Circle of the Moon boss on fucking steroids. It's god awful. Imagine playing Circle of the Moon's bosses, but there are kill pits that one hit kill you and you can't level up or anything.
I'd rather die.
Yeah, that's basically that final thing. I would honestly say that this version of the game is not really worth your time. It's far inferior to the original Rondo of Blood. And if you were saying, well, I want to play a Castlevania game on the Super Nintendo, you could be playing Super Castlevania 4, man. Like, that game is ousting Dracula X by a mile. There was another significant port of, well, a remake, I guess, again, of Rondo of Blood on the PSP. It's basically just the same game, but with some ugly 3D visuals that have aged horribly. 2.5D is something that I think visually only recently is starting to really work, because we now can make models with animations that don't come across so clunky, and actually, like, now we got games like, you know, like Guilty Gear Xrd, where the characters' 3D models might as well look like they're 2D, but like it works excellently, and it doesn't make any liberties to have that visual style. Or very recently, Mega Man 11, I guess, is a good example of a 2.5D game that is actually nice to look at and is fun to play, although I still prefer the 8-bit visual style. I'm not against that change. I digress. PSP version, it's just awful, which is a shame because all of the character designs were redrawn and reimagined by Yami Kojima, who is awesome, and yeah, these character designs are all great. I think that this is the best looking version of 12-year-old Maria the entire series ever had. The game also did have a couple of alternative stages. Most of them are kind of remixed anyway, but there is a stage where they added a completely new boss. They also changed one of the bosses around, so rather than one of the characters getting possessed if you mess up and fighting you with as a possessed, like, it's like Camilla's possessed them in the, I think it's in Dracula X that it's a boss fight for. I'm not sure it's even in Rondo of Blood. Instead, in this game, they get turned into a vampire, and basically, I honestly think it's just a developer's excuse to try and make the game have some sort of pervy thing involved. Yeah, but, you know, you're killing them. You're not doing anything else, so what was really the point? I don't know.
Sex sells, kid. Wah.
I don't know, that was a tangent, but with that in mind, with that change to the script, there are multiple changes to the overall script. The cutscenes are all redone, and it's all done in, I guess, an attempt to try to fit in more with Symphony of the Night's narrative, but it all just comes across as pointless. It doesn't really feel like it's making any changes that I'm like, oh, thank goodness, now I know, now Dracula talks to Richter before he fights him, because it was so confusing when I played Symphony of the Night, and like, I was like, but wait, Dracula talks to Richter after he fights him in Rondo of Blood, what the fuck, like, who cares?
Right,
like,
I got this.
It's not really that important.
This is the Hank Hill moment, you know? Don't you realise you're not making Symphony of the Night better? You're just making Rondo of Blood worse.
Dracula Chronicles X, I mean, I know it has its fans. If you have to play something that isn't Rondo of Blood, I'd say play that over Dracula X. At least it's a more accurate experience. But why do that when you could unlock Rondo of Blood in that game and just play Rondo of Blood?
How'd you do that?
Well, as I said before in my Legacy of ClassicVania video for Symphony of the Night, you literally have to find the disc or like the cartridge or whatever in the game world and then just unlock it that way.
Do you unlock both of those games at the same time?
Nope, you have to find a Rondo of Blood disc and you have to find a Symphony of the Night disc.
Are they in the same level?
Not sure, I don't think they are. I think you can unlock Rondo of Blood earlier than you can unlock Symphony of the Night, which is a pain because that is the only way to play Symphony of the Night portably and one of the only ways to even play Symphony of the Night. And it's the same for Rondo of Blood. Rondo of Blood's even harder to find, so it's kind of annoying that one of the only legitimate ways to play Rondo of Blood is through an obscure PSP game that everyone has forgotten about, basically. The only other ports that have ever existed for this game, for everyone outside of Japan, was a Wii Virtual Console import. But because the Wii Virtual Console is now dead, that game has lost the time. Thank God that we're getting a PS4 port of both Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night, which makes me incredibly happy, and I'm hoping it makes other fans incredibly happy. I guess I would just say it's a start. I want to see this get ported to as many systems as possible. I want to see a Switch version, I want to see an Xbox One version, and most importantly, I want a PC version, because if it's on the PC, it's unlikely to ever go away.
How much does a PC engine cost these days?
I don't know, I don't even want to imagine. Anyway, Rondo of Blood, I think it's the best one in the series. Go find out when you get the game on the PS4.
Coming out 26th of October. 26th of October, the same day.
Oh, baby.
Same day as the Netflix show.
Oh! Yay! Also, the music's really good. I've said that for every single game, but the music's really good in this one as well.